On the Dhamma Discord server, it happens again and again that people join who had quite a number of negative experiences with the practice. In a sense, they go too far in one direction without noticing it, and often hold a view that true practice is full of hardship, difficulty, and even must feel bad, and they relish that feeling of badness, thinking that they are making progress. While the practice does require a lot of effort, it does not mean that it must feel difficult or joyless all the time. It's quite the opposite. In this video, we discuss how to overcome such negative states of mind connected with the practice and how to set a more positive feedback loop in motion. But first, we need a few examples of what the typical practice of such people looks like. Let us start with one extreme, which would be the dry insight practitioner. In one way, such a person is said to practice without jhanas, but in a more modern sense, such people often describe joyless practices that feel quite dry, hence the name. Among those are various schools of Buddhism, including those that focus on just noting, labeling, and other things. While I can understand the general idea of going against focusing or wrong pleasure-based practices, they go, at least in my opinion, too far into another extreme. Yet other practitioners have taken up the view that the practice is all about enduring, restraint, hardship, renunciation, and in a sense, they have ritualized what the Buddha called the very starting point of the cultivation of wholesome states, as the sutras say. You have rightly seen and understood that restraint and enduring are indeed necessary, especially in the beginning, but stopped right there, short of the hardwood of the Dhamma. You can blindly restrain, you can blindly endure, and you can do the same thing with wisdom and a sense of joy and appreciation, which would be much better. Yet more often than not, people blindly endure nowadays, and that is especially true for the super serious practitioner who talks down on basically everything and everyone. Practice is a serious business, no question about it, but you should not develop an elitist mindset around the practice. As it is most often the case, both styles of practice get some things right and other things wrong. It is very rare that a style of practice gets everything wrong or everything right. In the one case, no one will follow it. In the other case, we would not need anything else. Yet in both cases, an essential element of the practice is missing that must follow if you practice rightly. It is joy. It is absolutely impossible to practice rightly and not experience great relief and great joy on and off the cushion alike. Joy is essential for practice, and right practice cannot happen without, even way, way before stream entry or jhana. Yet, it has to be the right kind of joy, as I often explain. Much more often than not, having no joy, people cultivate wrong joy and get stuck there. They get joy, but it is a sensual kind of joy, and that is not the joy that the Buddha was talking about. Every joy that you get, every joy that is not relief-based, is not the joy that the Buddha and the Sutras were talking about, because it is connected to and accompanied by craving. And once the meditation stops, you are right back where you were before. Sure, maybe you have dropped some of your sensual views or something like that, but then you value the meditation itself. You value the joy that you get from it, and that is not the right kind of practice. And just a quick reminder, as it is very relevant here, there is a joy of the worldly life, which revolves around attaining things or getting what one wants. And then there is the joy that is apart from that. The second kind of joy that is completely wholesome is a joy of no longer needing anything, something you were previously kind of addicted to. You cannot chase after the second kind of joy, and you cannot do a little meditation dance or recipe to get there. It can only come about through a change of views and values, but it is much more sturdy and with you both on and off the cushion. You don't need to do anything to get it. But anyway, here are a few examples. As an example, the sutras do not only speak of joy at the very end of the path or upon stream entry, they speak of joy all the time and never confine the joy to just the sitting posture. If your joy is restricted like that, it is wrong joy. Sutras say, householder, there are these four kinds of joy. Happiness, kinds of joy and happiness that may be achieved by a layperson who enjoys sensual pleasures, depending on time and occasion. What for? The happiness of ownership, the happiness of enjoyment, the happiness of freedom from debt, and the happiness of blamelessness. While seeing these things clearly, the wise one knows both kinds of happiness. The other is not worth a 16th part of the bliss of blamelessness. To give you a relatable example, the feeling of paying back debt is much closer to the right kind of joy than any kind of sensual engagement. Yeah, and still that is not the joy of blamelessness. So anyway, such dry practices work according to the suttas. You can arrive at wisdom. Can you arrive at wisdom without joy, or was it just noting or something like that? Well, according to the suttas, the answer must be a clear no. Whenever you practice virtue rightly, on the level of uprooting the views that I have mentioned before in many videos, you do pay back your sensual debt all the time. As a result, you must experience the lightness of no longer needing something that you were previously oppressed by, like an addiction. If you do not experience that lightness, then you have not truly given up something. You still value it, and it could re-arise at any point if the circumstances allow for it. And that is not truly letting go, not renouncing, not giving up. And as such, you still value things, and they will come back in the future. The sutras often explain the practice in terms of its effects, and among those things, the following 5 factors are mentioned over and over again whenever it comes to samadhi. Sometimes they are embedded in a number of other elements, but yeah. So first, there is gladness or pamoja, joy or piti, appliance or pasadi, bliss, sukha, and in the end, there is concentration or samadhi. You go through those steps when cultivating the Noble Eightfold Path. Yet pretty much all of the conventional good feelings happen before all the positive past qualities become unified in samadhi. Samadhi literally means gathering, coming together of all the previous past factors, of the factors of awakening. So if you experience none of those things before your samadhi, how could you ever arrive at samadhi? Impossible. Right practice has to have relief, and relief-born joy as a result. On the worldly level, we simply have accumulated a great number of addictions that bully us around all the time. They oppress us. It is like having debt. It is like being sick. Like in all the similes when it comes to freedom from the 5 hindrances, as the Buddha explained. Those are the things you should look out for. Whenever you give up the dependence on an addiction, it can only result in a feeling of great relief, great joy, great lightness. If there is no joy, you are missing something. Then you have not truly renounced. You are only temporarily free from the circumstances that allow for the arising of craving. And that is no freedom at all. Deep down you know that you are indebted, and you feel the weight of it all the time if you have not paid back your debt. That said, it would also be wrong to assume that the practice feels good all the time, especially in the beginning. That is not true at all. Whenever you deprive yourself of something you like, even if it is bad for you, it will feel bad at first. It will feel like a loss. You need a mind that is in a somewhat stable state to even start doing such a thing. When you have maneuvered yourself in a situation of depression, Dhamma practice is simply not for you yet. Fix your worldly things first, and then come back to the Dhamma practice. It is hard enough for a normal person. If you are, in addition to that, depressed, good luck. You will likely maneuver yourself into an even worse spot. Yet, after the initial worsening, when you keep practicing in a good condition, you can pull the root, and you will, if you do that, there will be joy. For every root you pull, for every root sensual view, there is a relief and relief-born joy akin to the simile of the 5 hindrances. And just to repeat it, just as when a man taking a loan engages in a trade and his trade succeeds, he now not only disposes of his old debt, but he has also, beyond that, a surplus of maintaining a wife. And at that, he rejoices, is glad at heart. And when these 5 hindrances are abandoned, he considers himself as free from debt, rid of illness, emancipated from the prison bondage, as a free man, and as one who arrived at a place of safety. Giving up any attachment like that has to produce some level of that relief. The more you give up, the bigger the relief that you will experience. So whenever you give up something rightly, you experience relief and joy, and as a result, you gain confidence in that approach. You develop faith in the practice, confidence in the practice. If you haven't been willing to abandon something you derived safety from before, with the increase in confidence, you might be able to do so later. And so you repeat this process. Whenever you notice a craving of yours, you dig up the root, pull it by considering as anicca and dukkha, and as a result, there will be even greater relief, and you unlock new things to practice with, so to speak. And so you proceed along a path of renouncing the dependence on more and more things until you arrive at more and more general layers of attachment. It is a bit like in the simile of purifying gold. You start with abandoning gross defilements, and the more subtle, only only really become visible after the gross dirt is gone. And at some point you arrive at the very core of the Dhamma, the hardwood. And once you are there and pull that root, the overall dependence on safety and feeling good, then you make a breakthrough to the Dhamma. But only then are you truly ready. Only based on faith and experience-based confidence are you willing to jump into the abyss. So you have to do the work beforehand. Very, very, very few people are able to do so without. But anyway, let us now come to the most important points. First, there is no practice, no right practice, without relief and relief-born joy. Restraining and giving up is a joyful process, and craving is oppressive. So you give up something oppressive, something that is oppressing you, something that is forcing you, and that can only result in relief and joy. Start small and work your way up. Start with what you have at hand. Start with all the small things in your life, because the big choices and big things in your life are just the result of the small things that you are unwilling to give up. And then you generalize until you arrive at the most fundamental value or craving. Well, craving for existing, pretty much. Experiencing relief and joy gives rise to confidence. And based on confidence, you can give up even more and start a positive feedback loop. And this is what you try to do. There is no such thing as a dry meditation practice, except for the very, very beginning. But later, there has to be joy all the time. Otherwise, you can be pretty certain that you do it wrong. Anyway, this should be enough for today. Thank you very much for listening. If you enjoy what I do, feel free to like, subscribe, and do all the YouTube things. But until then, I wish you a pleasant day and